Again, I hope you all had a good evening last night. Incredible speakers, right? Yeah, thank you all. Thanks for being here, and welcome to, you're right, the 32nd National Forum, and this is Advancing Sustainable Communities. I mentioned yesterday that we had visited with Picun, and Ramon Ramirez, the president of the Northwest Tree Planters and Farm Workers United, took us around the housing development and the community center and the leadership institute that they've developed out there in Woodburn. If you all haven't been down there, it's really worth a visit. And at the end of our visit, he asked everybody to give him one word that captures their experience having been there for about only 2 hours. And the words that came out, these are the ones I remember, were inspiring, empowerment, hopeful, and accomplishment, great accomplishment. You know, after seeing the site and talking to those associated with the organization, the union, and hearing about the hazards to farm workers, the hazards they face from exposure on an ongoing basis, and the efforts that are ongoing there for training of farm workers, you couldn't help but feel inspired, empowered, and hopeful. And because of what's going on there, I think we can take a lesson for ourselves over this day today, and as we leave this room, hopefully we'll all stay here and party at the end of the conference later on this evening. But in terms of Picun, you know, the kinds of questions we were asking, are there continuing challenges for farm workers? Yes. Is there a sense that there are inspiring examples of change, a sense of empowerment that people that come from the community can lead the community out of the problems that they're facing? And the answer is definitively yes. Has Picun accomplished changes? Yes. And do people have a sense of hopefulness there in the community? Now recognize these are among the most exposed folks to pesticides in our society. So when I reflected on that, I was thinking those words and that their experience really reflected how I feel about this conference, especially after hearing some of the depressing news last night. In other words, that experience for me captured the purpose of this meeting. We join together annually to be inspired, to be empowered, to walk away from this event with a sense of hopefulness that we, as leaders, we are leaders, go back to our communities, accomplish the changes that are necessary to protect health and the environment. And that's key, that's sense. So during the conference, we will identify the challenges. This is the depressing part. We began with that last night, as you heard, impacts on the ecosystem, beneficial organisms, threat to human health we'll be talking about today. They define the urgency, and I really want to underscore urgency of what we're dealing with here. And I got that sense from you last night, so I don't think we're going to have any problem with that word, urgency. The science, though, drives the debate on health and environmental protection. So we do, as an organization in this meeting, we do bring scientists in here to give you some really, sometimes overwhelming science. Okay? And the science identifies the threat and the need. Also, the lack of science, right, identifies our urgency as well. I mean, we're seeing this with the GMO and the deregulation of genetically engineered organisms, the movement toward 2,4-D tolerant corn. We're seeing this with pesticide-incorporated plants, which, you know, EPA calls plant-incorporated protectants. EPA calls the pesticide-incorporated plants. Has the same initials. So every time I walk into EPA, I say, those are those pesticide-incorporated plants, and they correct me and tell me they're plant-incorporated protectants. So, you know, we're seeing resistance, increasing pesticide use, and we're seeing the neonicotinoids and systemic pesticides that are poisoning the nectar and pollen of vast acreages. We saw that and heard about that last night. We're seeing inadequate protection of children and inadequate protection of farm workers and a lack of social justice, as we heard from Ramon yesterday. But we learn quickly that the issues, and I heard this last night, the issues we work on are not won or lost on science alone or facts alone. If they were, I think we would have solved this problem after the publication of Silent Spring, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, we heard about all these problems. This is about having the science and facts to rally our communities, our elected officials, the companies that we buy from. Now, I want to talk to you a minute about essentiality, the need for chemicals. We also heard last night that despite these highly toxic materials that are invading our lives, productivity is not enhanced by the dependency on these systemic pesticides, right? So if someone says that they want to use a toxic chemical in our community, and does that give them the right to sacrifice health of people in the environment? For what purpose? To what end? I mean, are we seeing an end result? Is it necessary to achieve a pest management goal? Are there safer, sustainable practices? We have this same debate about agriculture. We have this debate in our communities about turf management. And we are challenging the system as leaders, you all, to ask that question about essentiality. Not just focus on the health impacts, but the essentiality. Do we need this? Are there alternative strategies that accomplish the same end goal? Now, we tend to call those things alternatives currently. Alternatives, think about that. These are not really alternatives. These need to be the mainstream practices. We advance organic systems. Organic agriculture has become institutionalized in our society. Hopefully, we'll be able to maintain the high integrity associated with that. These are systems that renew ecological balance, nutrients recycling. They eliminate reliance on hazardous synthetic inputs. And we advance integrated pest management, defined integrated pest management in the structural environment, our schools, our offices, our homes. How do we ratchet down pesticide use and identify acceptable materials in those contexts? If the decision-making process, though, around any of these things, in our communities, whether it's USDA, EPA, whatever regulatory state agency we're dealing with, lacks integrity, then the outcome of the process, the credibility of that process, has to be questioned. So if the decisions lack clear principles, I mean, that's our job, to define these principles, these health principles, these essentiality principles. That's our job as leaders in the community, to affect the ongoing changes that we want to see and protect against degradation. We want to make sure those outcomes are meaningful. We don't want to struggle and fall short of our goal. Obviously, we want to keep pushing hard. It was the people's, remember this, it was the people's disbelief in the proclamations of safety that came out of EPA. Some of you remember the Alar scare years ago. It was that disbelief in that process and the integrity, the lack of integrity associated with that decision-making process that drove people toward organic standards and organic practices. We do not want that to happen with the current organic standards that we have today. We recognize that we have challenges in the political process. Look at Congress and the Farm Bill reversed some scientific decisions that came out of EPA. So obviously politics plays a big role in all of this. At the same time that we face all these challenges, and this is why we're here ultimately, we know that there are solutions within our grasp. We know they're there. We're going to hear from people around the country who have solutions, have adopted solutions in their community. We know what good law looks like. We're going to hear from great lawyers. And we know what the practices and policies and sustainability looks like, and we need to rally our communities and build political muscle. Somebody last night mentioned Justice Brandeis, and he did say the most important political office is that of a private citizen. So clearly it's within our power. I agree with that quote without any equivocation. So welcome to this event. Thank you for what you're doing. Thank you for taking the time to come to this event and increase your own knowledge about these things. Share your knowledge. We intend to end this conference, just like we ended our day at Piccoon, on a hopeful note. That's where we're ending this conference. So believe me, that's where you walk out of here hopeful, inspired, empowered. That's what we want to accomplish. And thanks for joining us in this experience today and for all you're doing.